in Reston. Stephen, you're live with Eric and Matt. How are you doing?
Not bad. How are you doing?
I got a quick question for you, Stephen. Where in Louisiana is Reston? Because I just drove through Louisiana twice this week.
I got you. So it's right on the I-20 corridor, kind of in between West Monroe and Shreveport.
Okay.
If you're going 70 miles an hour, you don't see much of it.
and also, I wouldn't have seen any of it because I was on I-10. So.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to talk with us about today?
Well, I was talking with your call screeners, and I was kind of mentioning that my friend, he wanted me to call you guys. I don't actually know much about your show, but I mean I am interested. But he's a fan, so he wanted me to call. And I guess my question for you guys, I've been told that you guys are atheists, right?
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So would either of you classify yourselves as anti-theists, perhaps?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that there's a couple different usages of the term anti-theist. I mean, Hitchens had one that I disagree with. I think his was better labeled anti-religionists. But
yeah.
And it just kind of depends. I mean, we both said yes fairly quickly, but it's worth pointing out that what we mean by that may not be the same thing as what somebody else understands. My take's really simple. I am not convinced that any gods exist. That's what makes me a non-theist or an atheist. For most of the gods that have been presented to me, if they appear to be falsifiable and in conflict with things that we know about reality, then I actively believe that they do not exist, the positive atheism thing. And for theistic notions that would expect reverence, worship, subservience, even if they were real and existed, I would be in opposition to those, which is one of the reasons why I would identify as an anti-theist. Because for me, anything that would truly be deserving of worship would never expect it in the first place. And so if a particular God was to prove to me right now that it existed, I would no longer be an atheist because I would believe that God exists, but that doesn't tell you anything at all about whether or not I would worship it or revere it or respect it at all. I might actively work in opposition to it.
And I have a different working definition in my head. When I think anti-theist, Stephen, were you on hold for the last call? Did you hear what we were talking about?
I caught the tail end of it, but I wasn't able to hear the whole conversation.
No worries. So we were talking to a gentleman who was given a diagnosis, a cancer diagnosis. And instead of getting the love and support of a family member that they really care about, this person has instead decided that they wanted to hound him over getting right with God. And it was damaging. Mm-hmm. And we get those kinds of messages all of the time from people who, instead of being able to interact with their family treats them as a project. And it's no longer about the relationship, but about trying to convert them. And it's hurtful. It's damaging. And so when I think of anti-theist, I see the kinds of damage that religion does, right? It forces families apart. Every weekend I meet people who have been disowned by family members or disowned by their entire family. This Thanksgiving and Christmas, I meet all of these amazing, wonderful, kind, incredible people who, for one reason or another aren't able to connect with a family. And so we're kind of creating family for each other. In being an anti-theist for me, it's
I got you.
Trying to undo some of this damage. And then you have things like, justification of bigotry, right? You have people who are couching their bigotry like their, hate of homosexuality or
That's actually kind of close to me,
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And so that would be the difference.
Just for clarity, so that we're not just sitting here defining ourselves by all the things that we're not. I'm a skeptic. I'm a skeptic, and I'm a humanist, and those two come before whether or not I'm a believer in any particular god or religion.
Okay, actually, that's actually an important clarification. I'm happy you made it because here in Ruston we have Louisiana Tech over here.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And there are actually a lot of Texan students that come over here, but that's another point. But anyway, I meet a lot of people here, I'm in a philosophy club and things like that. Just places that people can get together and things.
Sure.
And it's always interesting to me how a lot of people they pronounce themselves anti-theists or things like that, but they don't make that clarification that you just made. But that is like one of the things that that I hold, but it's not the first descriptor of myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
And
That you hold
I
the
think-
anti-theist position?
No, he wasn't saying that he holds.
Oh, okay.
He was saying,
No, I meet people that are,
Right.
Vehemently, anti-God and anti, organization and things like that, and they base their whole personality around that. And I don't think that's a peaceful way to live, so to
Well,
speak.
I
just
don't know. I would kind of push back on that a little bit because, I mean, first off, I'm anti-God the same way that I'm anti, pick a fictional, bad guy, pick a Voldemort
More so.
or Sauron or whatever.
more so because Voldemort and Sauron don't have a contingent of people running around trying to tell everybody that they are the worshipers of the one true God.
But that's the point.
Making legislation that affects us all.
That's exactly the point.
So I am vehemently against religious privilege, superstition. I want all of those things anything that is not rationally supported by evidence needs to go away because it is a pollutant that is poisoning our society.
But that doesn't mean that we're anti, the character of God as much as we are anti what people are doing because they're couching their faith or their bigotry or whatever the case is in that religion. So
And not against the people.
yeah. So it's what people are doing in the name of that religion, right? It's the actions that are being informed by that faith that really kind of makes me, and I don't think that's a bad way to live because the fact is in standing up for LGBTQ rights, we're creating a safe place for them here. In standing up and saying, you know what, I'm not putting up with it.
Yeah,
A lot of people, while they lose their family, they come here and they get a new one.
Saying you're vehemently standing in opposition.
You're literally.
Yeah, but
I'm sorry.
You can portray anything. You can portray.
I'm sorry. There must be a delay.
Yeah, there is a delay. You can portray any of these things as negative. Mothers against drunk drivers are vehemently against drunk drivers, but they're on the side of righteousness in the same way that, when I stand up against bigotry and privilege that is poisoning, there are people who could paint that as a negative. Oh, look how angry Matt is. And my response is, if you're not angry, you just aren't paying attention. But at this point, because we've talked a little bit about us, I kind of just want to know where you're at and maybe why your friend asked you to call in.
Yeah.
Well, my friend wanted me to call in because he's a big fan of your show. First
Yay.
off, and second, I am a theist, but in a way, I'm very much anti, organization of religion. I don't like the idea of mass churches, like these big organizations that take hold and they corrupt people's minds to believe one thing or another. You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't like that idea, and I don't like kind of what one of you said earlier about religious privilege, especially when it comes to government and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I don't like that idea, but I am a theist. I will admit to being a theist every day of the week.
well, so can I ask you, what is it about your religion that has you convinced?
Has me convinced to be a theist or to be anti-religion?
To be a theist.
Okay, to be a theist. Well, that is a difficult question. And I'm sure both of you realize that, of course. But I would have to say that from reading the Bible and solely that fact alone, I am a theist. I am a skeptic, by the way, and I feel like that's very important to say. Usually when I'm making introductions to new people or to new groups, categorizing myself as a theist is one of the last things I do. You know what I mean? Like
Well-
that comes up weeks later when I get to know people, for a while.
There's a curious thing for me because I teach and I do a lot about skepticism. I have an entire touring magic show that teaches the foundations of skepticism. So when somebody says to me that they're a skeptic and they're a theist because they read the Bible, there's a massive disconnect there because not only have I read the Bible and studied it and taught it, skepticism is this view that I will not believe something until there's sufficient evidence for it. And when you say that you're convinced because you read the Bible is the claim, it is not the evidence for the claim. And so if you read it and became convinced, to me, that's in conflict with good skeptical practices. So what was it about reading the Bible that convinced you?
Yeah, to be clear, you're talking to two people who've read the Bible as well and have come up with a different result.
Yes,
so,
of course.
So,
I read the Bible, and I guess I completely understand what you mean by it is the claim to the Judeo-Christian, God, as it were. It is the claim of what has happened or what is happening, so to speak. And truth be told, I am a skeptic, but I do not know how to properly quantify my theism, so to speak. And it is a contradiction that I'm willing to admit. I'm willing to admit that I do not know certain things. And,
me too. I mean, I don't know is probably my favorite answer and usually the right one. But when I talk about this, I was a skeptic long before I was an atheist. But the reason that I'm able to say that is because I had not applied skepticism to my religious beliefs. My religious beliefs were a matter of largely indoctrination, and the people around me believed, and so it seemed reasonable. But when I tried to apply good standards of evidence to it, which is something that you really must do, what I found is that there isn't sufficient evidence to justify the claim, and that's the thing I'm trying to get, because you seem to give the impression that either you're a skeptic and you just don't know how to apply skepticism to the religious claim, or you're a skeptic who's applied it to the religious claim and it has come out warranted and justified. And if it is warranted, I would love to know, because I don't want to be wrong. That's what being a skeptic's about, is not wanting to be wrong.
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So I am of the position of the latter, not the former. So I have applied my skepticism. Well, I won't say my skepticism. That gives like a twinge of subjectivism.
Yeah, no, I like that. Thanks.
I like the fact that I believe that I have objectively examined the claim that is the Bible and the claims therein.
And so, what's the supporting evidence?
I have not found them wanting.
How did you
what's
vet
the
it?
supporting evidence?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How did you vet that?
Yeah, what's the supporting evidence for the claims that you now accept?
Well, I mean, to say the least, talking to guys like you, I do enjoy talking to guys like you, especially face to face, and it makes me question what I believe, and I believe it's a healthy exercise. And the answer that I usually give is one that is, like I said, usually good enough. I was young. I'm still young, but I was younger rather, and I was heavily indoctrinated and things of that nature with my family and everything of that nature, and eventually, when I was young, tragedy struck my family. I lost my dad and things like that. And so
right.
I eventually started to rebel against indoctrination, things like that. But eventually it kind of came back home to me, once I had calmed down from my grief and things like that. And I actually, the answer that I usually give to people is I re-examined my religious beliefs with healthy skepticism.
Well, so you've said that already.
Hang on. For your own benefit, Stephen, when this recording, when this show hits the air, I'd like you to rewind back to where I said, what is the evidence that convinced you? And listen to your response, because nothing approaching evidence was ever presented. Like it was.
I'm actually aware.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's try this again.
But
then.
that's the only thing I care about.
Yeah,
I got you. Okay.
I mean, we would hope that whatever it was that convinced you was good and sufficient and
Should
would
convince
also
anybody.
convince us. And so while you're saying this, I'm waiting to hear that thing that will convince me. And if it wouldn't, then then I'll tell you. Well, and I'll tell you, Stephen. My follow-up question after this is, if it isn't convincing for me, why as a skeptic is it convincing for you?
Yeah.
So let's kind of double back again.
Right. Those are fair. Those are fair.
Yeah, what has convinced you? What is this supporting evidence? How did you vet it?
How did I vet it?
Mm-hmm.
So I see the correlation between reality and what is in the Bible.
How so?
In a manner of speaking. So when I see things like miracles being performed in the Bible, I see human error, I see stories, and I see narrative. So when I see a miracle in the Bible, I realize that those things probably did not happen true to fact. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Those things, you know.
But that kind of stuff happens in a ton of books.
For a person to do these things.
I think you'll find
But
that we're
I
still.
understand the value of the narrative.
I think you'll find that we're still a long ways away from presenting evidence for a proposition.
Yeah.
So you started down this path of saying you see a correlation between what the Bible has to say and facts about reality, and I was eager for it to go down that route, and then you kind of veered off to the left to say, hey, when I see miracles in the Bible, I'm pretty much convinced they didn't happen. My thing is, of course, getting back to the point that you started to make, that I think you would make, of course we're going to see things in the Bible that correlate with issues in reality, because if you're trying to figure out why are we here, why is there something instead of nothing, that's one of the things that religions propose. So to say that the proposed explanation of Christianity is at least consistent with reality is completely unremarkable. It's like if a murder was committed and I propose that the butler did it, that is entirely consistent. But the question is, what is the evidence that would lead us to reasonably conclude that the butler did it?
I got you. So the evidence, I would say, for the Bible, as it were, or any religious texts,
Okay.
I hold the personal view that the evidence is the narrative.
Okay, hold on a second. The evidence is the narrative. That's a little vague. Can you get a little more specific?
Absolutely. So I propose that the narrative, as it were, the stories that come out of religious texts, they help people.
But does that mean that they're true?
In many cases, they do not help people. But is it true?
Okay.
Yeah.
No. We got to stop. So you're advocating for, I'm asking for evidence, and you're advocating for the narrative. And then you point out that the narratives sometimes help people and the narratives sometimes don't help people. Isn't that what we would expect from any narrative? Isn't that going to be true for any text, not just a religious text, but a self-help book? Hell, Harry Potter books have helped people, because if you feel like you are the weirdo who's being excluded, now you have a champion and hero to bring you in to make you realize that you could be the hero, or you could be normal, you could be accepted. I can make this case for anything. The only thing I care about is, are the claims true, and why should we believe they're true? And we've gone on 3 or 4 different tangents now, and all I really want is, tell me what evidence convinced you. And if it turns out that the only thing that convinced you is that you found a compelling narrative, then I would point out as a skeptic, that is not evidence. That is, by definition, your emotional response to a text, a claim, and you are conflating that as if it's supportive of the claim. I can write a passage.
I've got the Book of Eric as a joke where we do that.
But I'm just looking for what is the evidence that should convince someone that a God exists.
This is a difficult question, of course, and I'm not trying to be pretentious or anything.
I don't think you are. I honestly, and I don't mean this in any insulting way, but I've done this show for like
of course not.
14 years. What I'm seeing from you is the same thing I'm seeing from other people, because we're all convinced. Let me ask you this: what's it feel like to be wrong?
What does it feel like to be wrong? It feels bad, of course.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That's the key. It feels wrong to find. It feels bad to find out you were wrong, but being wrong feels exactly like being right. We are wrong about countless things, and it feels like we're right. And this is what I'm seeing when I'm having this conversation with you: is you are convinced of something, and you think you have good reasons, but when asked for those good reasons, you keep giving bad reasons.
And as a skeptic, you can recognize that uncomfortability when you butt up against something that is contrary to the feeling, that you're right about this, right? When you start to question it, and you're recognizing that, well, maybe the foundations aren't as solid as I thought they were. It is an incredibly uncomfortable feeling. And Stephen, I know you don't watch the show, so for your benefit, I'll tell you that feeling of discomfort, that's what discovery. That's where you can grow it. That's what Eureka feels like.
That's the skepticism in your brain going, hang on, you're not using me correctly.
Yeah, when Socrates said he's the gadfly stinging at the horse that was Athens, that sting, that's that feeling. That feeling of, that discomfort. There's pain there.
So let's try this again. What is the evidence that convinces you that there's a God that should also convince other people as well?
I'm trying to frame my answer in such a way.
Yeah, and by the way, if you don't have an answer,
you can call back.
Yeah, that's fine too. I would rather people take on board the discussion and go and think about it and come back with a good answer than keep presenting,
Yeah, and if you want to talk about it with other people, our Reddit has been exploding. So reddit.com/r/talkheathen. You can go to one of our numerous Facebook groups or our Discord. There are tons of people who would love to talk. Or if you just want to study and call back next week, I'd love to talk to you about it.
But if you want, outside of the narrative, which I think we would agree was written by human beings, and there can be plenty of narratives that are impactful, independent of whether or not what they point to is true, what would be the strongest piece of evidence that you found compelling?
Sure. And like I said towards the beginning, a healthy answer is I do not know.
Yeah.
And I won't say that I do not wholly know. You know what I mean? I think I know.
Yeah, because that would be absurd. That would be absurd because then you would be claiming that you are convinced that something is true and unaware of why you're convinced, and that doesn't mesh with skepticism under any definition.
Exactly.
So,
I hope to hear from you again next week, man. Thank you for calling in.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Stephen.
All right, y'all have a good day.
You too.